Hey friends, Ash here. Welcome back to Gents. Hope you've been doing well. Not actually that tall. Today we're talking Lattafa fragrances, more specifically 15 of what I think are the best Lattafa clones that you can buy heading into this new year. Essentially what happened is I saw a whole bunch of new Lattafa fragrances popped up online, which constantly happens with clone brands. They're just always churning them out, right? So a whole bunch of new ones popped up that I hadn't seen before, placed an order for them. They'll be here pretty soon. But before they get here, I wanted to talk about what are some of my current favorites from the house. Show these ones some love before the new ones come in and maybe capture my attention for a little while. So yeah, all these are gonna be linked in the description below. Let's jump into it, let's check these out. And this is in no particular order. So the first one I talk about is not the best and the last one is not the worst, or vice versa. Why would it go reverse like that? That makes no sense. I'm gonna kick things off with Afro Leather. Yeah, Afro Leather. This is by Maison Alhamra. I should clarify that this is both Maison Alhamra and Lattafa, since it's the same company. Afro Leather, in case you could not tell by the name and the presentation, is a clone of African Leather by Memo Paris, which is my favorite fragrance that Memo makes. When I first got this one in, the main difference between this and African Leather was that African Leather had a little more of the cardamom off the top, that kind of sparkly, warm, sweet cardamom. This one had that, but it leaned into like the leather and vetiver side a lot quicker. I can say though that after owning this for a number of months, that the cardamom in the opening is much more prominent here than it was originally. So I would tell you, if you get this fragrance, or if you already own this fragrance and you smelled it, or you smell it and you think, oh, really nice, but the cardamom is not quite there, come back to it after a little while. Let it sit on your shelf. I know it sounds stupid, but let it sit on your shelf for a couple months, go back to it, and the opening is way better. This is the best clone of African Leather that I've smelled so far. So if you like that fragrance, if you want one that has this really attention-grabbing, almost designer-ish kind of cardamom, but at a higher quality, that's very sweet, kind of sparkly off the top, that dries down to feature leather and vetiver in a very nice, appealing way. Check this out. Gotta get this one out of the way, Kora. This is, of course, the clone of Angel Share from by Kilian. This one, thankfully, you can find much easier nowadays. For quite a while, when it first came out, it was sold out everywhere, and then would come into stock and sell out like that, and people were trying to sell it for crazy numbers on eBay, trying to rip you off. So thankfully, you can find it pretty easy now. So as I said, this is a clone of Angel Share from by Kilian. This is my wife's favorite Angel Share clone. She thinks it smells awesome. I also think that it smells awesome. Really nice, sweet, extremely well done. Attention grabber to the tens. Like, this is one that will easily get you noticed, get you compliments. Great for fall and winter time. It's just awesome. It's one of the best clones out there. Easily one of the best that Lattafa has done. And the presentation looks good too. So Angel Share, really, I think this is gonna be the top clone for a lot of people. There are a couple other ones out there that are really good, maybe on par with this one. Aries Intense is one of those. And then the other one is right here, Syrah Blend by Zamaya. This is not Lattafa, but look at that. You can tell they're related. This one is by Offnon, but you can't be in this video, so go away. Throw it back to this one, Forar Black. This is a clone of YSL's Y Eau de Parfum, and this one you can usually find for like 20 bucks, sometimes less. So this is one of those bargain bin fragrance clones. Anytime you're in that $20 range or even under, that's just goofy cheap at that point. That's the kind of fragrance that you don't really buy by itself. You wait and you kind of put it in order with other things. It is a really, really good one though for that price point. It smells quite close to Y Eau de Parfum. Good performance, of course, big compliment puller just like Y. Versatility through the roof. You can use this stuff anytime, anywhere, any place. I know a lot of people, they kind of want to go for niche fragrances with clones, or fragrances that are cloning niche fragrances. But I think that stuff like this, that you can get really cheap, that is cloning a designer fragrance that's highly sought after, that's not really cheap, because Y, even from discounters, is still pretty close to $100. Stuff like this deserves a spot too. Because I mean, this is probably what, like 20% the cost of a 100 ml bottle of Y Eau de Parfum, even at discounters, and it gets you real close. Now this next one, I am not a big fan of the bottle. To be fair, clone fragrance bottles have maybe gotten a little better over the years, because if you go back in the past, a lot of clone bottles were horrific looking. Just the cheapest, grodiest, tackiest stuff possible. And I'm not saying that they're not kind of like that nowadays sometimes, but in general, they're better now than they used to be. That said, I still don't really like this one a whole lot. It looks just kind of weird to me. But it's this one right here, Blue Sapphire, of course from Lattafa. These gemstones in the front, it's just weird looking. They're different sizes, kind of offset. It reminds me of like just a weird looking face looking at me with like one big eyeball and then one small eyeball, and the mouth is open. So it's kind of pulling like a, where would be the other eye? I can't do that. So yeah, it's just, I don't like it. Not too expensive though. This one about 25 bucks from discounters, so another one that's pretty cheap. And this is a clone, or smells quite similar to Eros Eau de Parfum from Versace. So it's gonna give you kind of Eros vibes, but not the exact same as Eros EDP. This one has a little bit more of an aromatic touch to it, maybe a little bit more powder depending on how you kind of pick that up, and not quite as sweet. That being said, that is splitting hairs a little bit, because when you smell it, you'll be like, oh, okay, I get it. But I will say that of the ones we've talked about so far, that this is more of a twist on Eros, whereas these are much closer to smelling pretty much the same as what they're copying. Then we have Sukrat. This one is a clone of Acqua di Gio's Profumo, which is a bigger deal nowadays because Acqua di Gio Profumo has been replaced by Acqua di Gio Parfum. Now, of course, you could just get Acqua di Gio Parfum, but again, that's not really all that cheap, and it doesn't smell the exact same as Profumo, so it's kind of its own thing. This one, as far as bang for buck goes, is gonna be your best bet if you want an Acqua di Gio Profumo alternative. And I will say this is much closer to Acqua di Gio Profumo than the last one was to Eros EDP. You get that same kind of incensey, aquatic, slightly aromatic herbal feel that you would get from Acqua di Gio Profumo, done really well, great quality on this, and another one that is an amazing bang for your buck. And where Acqua di Gio Profumo is discontinued, that's going to get more and more and more expensive, so having a really cheap alternative to that is great. After that, we got Maison Alhambra Woody Oud. This is a clone of Oud Wood from Tom Ford. Interestingly enough, with this line of fragrances from Maison Alhambra, you may have noticed that on fragrancebuy.ca, they have been listed as delisting soon for like the last 6 months. And that is because Fragrance Buy put out a 411, and they were like, look, we just got this information from Maison Alhambra that they are discontinuing these because there is the threat of, you know, potential action taken against them because of how close this looks in the name, right? And yet here we are many months later, and they are still popping up at discounters. They are still readily available. And so at this point, it looks like they are not delisting soon. I will say Maison Alhambra's Tom Ford fragrances, very well done. I mean, they're extremely obvious in what they're doing here, what they're knocking off. The names, again, are just really, 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 really close. But if you want a Tom Ford private blend fragrance on the cheap, these are gonna be some of the best alternatives out there. And it's pretty funny because they're not the only ones doing this. This is Fragrance World. See that? Intense peach, even down to the caps, the stickers, pretty much everything the exact same here. The bottles are the exact same. So basically just saying Fragrance World also has alternatives to Tom Ford that are well done. But these Maison Alhambra private blend fragrance clones are all great, and Woody Oud, really nice. Keep it moving with Roms Silver. This one, another one that does look pretty bad. I talked earlier about the fragrance clone bottles, and I was like, oh yeah, they used to be really bad in the past. Some of them still look bad. This is one that looks bad, I think anyway. Just looks real cheesy. Has all these random words on it. Hot, love, you and me, wish, together, jazz, wow, status, cool. Not the greatest look. Not the greatest look. Definitely looks cheap, looks cheesy. But then the fragrance itself, which is really ultimately what matters, smells great, and the price point is low. Really low. And this is a clone of Ultramall from Jean Paul Gaultier. Great performance here, lasts a long time, big compliment puller. Kind of filling that same niche as this one and this one, cloning a very versatile, highly sought after, compliment pulling designer fragrance that's not really cheap and giving it to you at a bargain price. Really obvious one here, Lattafa's Assad. Kind of can't talk Lattafa without talking Assad. That's one of the biggest ones that they have out. This is a clone of Sauvage Elixir. This is also going to be, as far as just bang for your buck, you know, your cheapest buy Sauvage Elixir alternative that's still really well done. This is going to be your best bet. Fragrance World has a good one also, Enigma Un, but that one is usually a little bit harder to find, a little bit more expensive. And so again, if you're just looking for the easiest one to find that's really good quality for the best price, it's going to be Assad. Sauvage Elixir, of course, highly sought after and also highly expensive as far as designer fragrances goes. And this one gets really close to it. It's going to give you that very masculine, very high quality, kind of spicy, woody mix. Classy, well done, good performance. Assad is hyped and highly sought after for a good reason. Now this next one is a personal favorite of mine. It is called Exclusive Tobac. This is from Maison Alhamra, and there is a whole line of fragrances that look like this, exclusive fragrances, and they are cloning Carolina Herrera. This one is cloning Mystery Tobacco, which I think is just top-notch. Very, very, very good. And that one's expensive. Mystery Tobacco is not cheap. It's even at discounters, I think usually like 250 bucks or so. That's if they have it in stock, because it actually sells out pretty often. This one is about $22 when it's in stock at discounters. This one does sell out sometimes. As of when I'm making the video, it's in stock, but about 22 bucks. So this is roughly 10% the cost of the Herrera. Same goes for the other exclusive fragrances by Maison Alhambra. This is an awesome tobacco fragrance for the price. It really truly is one of the best bang for your buck tobacco fragrances, period. Whether we're talking niche, designer, indie, clones, whatever, when you consider only how this smells and the price point, this is one of the best you can get. It's smooth, it's sweet, it's decently rich also. Mystery Tobacco is a little similar to red tobacco from Mancera, but it's not as aggressive as Mancera. It's not as potentially off-putting. Like Mancera's red tobacco, a lot of people, the opening, they can't do it. And because they hate that opening, they won't wear it, even if they like the dry down. This fixes that problem. It's a little similar to red tobacco, because Mystery Tobacco is, but you don't have that opening where you smell it and go, ah, it's right away from the opening. It is smooth, sweet, easygoing. So this stuff, this is great. This is awesome. Then we got Victorioso Legend. This is by Maison Alhambra, and this one is a clone of Invictus Legend. So we're going back into that whole designer fragrance that's pretty expensive nowadays at most places, and this is not expensive. They also have Victorioso Victory, which is very well done, and that is a clone of Invictus Victory. So if that's more your style, which personally I actually like Victory more, but if that's more your style, get that one also. This is real close, very, very, very close. There are a lot of clones, and including some of these, where you smell them and you know right away what it's cloning, but it's not exactly one-to-one. You can tell right away, like, oh, they've changed a little bit here, changed this, changed that, right? This is one where you smell it and you're like, in the air? I don't know that I could tell a difference. And that gets thrown out a lot, and it's true. If there's no context and somebody walks by and you smell one of these, you'll probably think, oh, it's probably whatever. Like if you smell Assad, you'll think, oh, it's Sauvage Elixir or something really close to it, right? With this, I don't think I could tell it apart. I really don't. I think somebody walks by with this on, I would just be like, oh, that's Invictus Legend. And for the price, it's just like, I don't even know how they did it, but I'm not gonna question it. So this is Invictus Legend. Now we're gonna go with the other Kora Kaa. So this obviously a flanker of that. It's really similar. This is not crazy removed from how Kora smells. Basically, they've taken Kora and added a coffee note to it. That's, if you want to break it down the most simple way, that's basically what they did. So if you're looking for something that's going to be, you know, a big departure from the original or very different from the original, might be let down. But I find it really interesting. I actually like it quite a bit. Sometimes when you smell it, you don't get a lot of coffee. Other times you do. So it's kind of wafts in and out. So at times you'll be like, oh, a lot of coffee. It's very prominent. And other times you go, that's That's calm raw. That's just calm raw. So with this one, everything I said about the original applies to Kora. The quality, wearability, compliment factor, all that stuff applies to this one just the same. Whether you should check it out or not depends on if you derive value from that added coffee. Keeping in mind that it's not a massive overdose of coffee that's put in here, it's a moderate amount. So if you find that to be redundant to the original, don't even bother with it. But if it makes it a little more interesting to you and you wear it more and that addition of coffee actually elevates it, then you should own it. For me, I like it. I'm glad I have it. But I've heard from other people who think the other way, that it doesn't do enough different. So they don't really dig it. Oud for Glory up next. This is another one of those extremely obvious clones. That is Oud for Greatness by Initio, which is pretty expensive. And there are a couple other houses out there that I've seen and actually own fragrances from where they copy the presentation style, just like this is doing, and they are so much cheaper than the Lattafa. This one is noticeably nicer than the other clone fragrances, at least presentation-wise, that have tried to do a similar presentation. And fragrance-wise, this is actually really good too. So it's not just the presentation. It'd be kind of goofy if they went all out with the presentation and then we're like, okay, make sure we got the worst Oud for Greatness clone out there, put it in this bottle. That would make a lot of sense. So that one is actually really close to Oud for Greatness, gonna give you an extremely similar scent profile, performance on it, very good as well. Great bang for your buck. And not much more to say about that. It's Oud for Greatness. Then we got the Tux. This one sells out a bunch. So this one is sometimes harder to find than a lot of other ones here. That is a clone, of course, of YSL's Tuxedo. Another one extremely well done, just smells great. It's really classy, but sexy at the same time. Warm, kind of spicy. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that Tuxedo has so many different fragrances out there that kind of smell like it. Maison Alhamra has a clone of it. Fragrance World has a clone of it. Who else is it? Paris Corner has a clone of it. Mustache Eau de Parfum smells similar to it. There are other fragrances out there as well that smell similar to Tuxedo. The Tux, one of the best out there, and still one of the best that Maison Alhamra / Lattafa has. Close to the end, up next we have from Lattafa, Ishq Ashiyuk Silver. And this is another one where I'm not too keen on the presentation. It actually comes across to me pretty cheap, the presentation and the cap. Yes, it does that all the time. I say that like it's a good thing. It's not a good thing, but the last time that I took the cap off to show that it has this problem, this didn't happen. So now it has happened. I have this little device, like a little hook, and I can do that and yeah, pull the collar out when that happens. This bottle has a bad habit of the cap ripping off the collar every time that you take the cap off. Don't mind me, I'm just doing some surgery on this bottle here. Good as new, until I take the cap off again. So yeah, it has its issues, we'll say that, but the fragrance smells great, and it's not that expensive. This smells quite similar to 1 Million Lucky. So very, very close to that. It gives you a nice pineapple off the top as well. So really nice, fresh sweetness, fruity sweetness there. When you first spray this on, grabs attention right away. And then as it dries, they get very close to 1 Million Lucky. What's inside is what counts, people. And last but certainly not least, Immortal, Jean Lo Immortal. The Jean Lo line is cloning Louis Vuitton, and they've got some darn good ones, actually, some real nice ones, other than this one. This is the one that gets the most hype, that gets talked about the most, but the others are solid also. So it's kind of similar to the Tom Ford clones here, where you look at the bottles, the name, and you know right away, okay, this is what it's cloning. So if you wanted other Louis Vuitton clones, you could look at the others in the Jean Lo line. This one is a clone of Louis Vuitton's L'Immensité. It has an amazing opening once again. It's just fantastic. The quality is there. Big compliment puller. Very fresh, citrusy when you first spray this on. Of course, Louis Vuitton is not cheap, so being able to get that at a discount makes it an amazing buy. Now with this, I have to warn you once again that it does sell out pretty often at discounters. And if that happens, you may search around and it'll be like, where else can I find it? And on eBay, I have seen people asking over $100 for this one, asking upwards of $160 before, which is just crazy. So do not do that. Don't buy it for that amount. Wait for it to come back in stock. I've seen this at discounters for under 30 bucks. You don't want to spend $100+ on a fragrance that realistically you should be buying for like 25, 30, 35 on the high end. This one's great though, and that will wrap up the list. So there we go, 15 Lattafa fragrances. Some of these may get bumped when I get in that big order that I just placed, but for now, these are some of my favorites. I will say there are other ones not featured here that are just as good as a lot of the ones here, but I wanted to keep it to 15. Thank you all, stay safe out there. I'll see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys later.